Good morning to everyone. Let me welcome all present and the viewing and listening public to the 17th meeting of the Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure. I'd like to advise that this meeting is being broadcasted live on Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Derup Timal, and I'm the chairman of this Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure. And I would like to invite members of this committee to introduce themselves. So, members of the committee, we can go in any order. If you can please introduce yourselves.
Good morning, everyone. Luka Sagram Singh Suklal, member.
Good morning, everyone. Simon Denobrega, member.
Yeah, member Padarat.
Good morning, everyone. Barry Padarat, member. My apologies.
Okay, thank you very much, members. Those are the members of the committee present. We do expect one or two members to join us a bit later on. Let me please announce that the purpose of this meeting is to commence the committee's second public hearing pursuant to its inquiry into the impact of landfills on the environment of Trinidad and Tobago, with officials from the Ministry of Public Utilities, Ministry of Planning and Development, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, Environmental Management Authority, the Trinidad and Tobago Solid Waste Management Company Limited, and the Tobago House of Assembly, Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. Just to remind everyone that the inquiries of the objectives of the inquiry is threefold. The first objective, to examine the operations of the waste disposal at landfills in Trinidad and Tobago. Two, to identify the challenges facing the authorities with addressing environmental issues brought on by waste disposals at the landfills. And three, to determine the measures required to reduce the negative impact of waste disposal at landfills on the environment. Those are our three primary objectives. And I would now like to ask the entities who are here with us for your opening remarks and for your introduction of yourself and the members of your team. So we would like to start with the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I am Nicolette Duke, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Public Utilities. The Ministry thanks you for this opportunity to once again join this discussion on the impact of landfills on the country's environment. We look forward to the recommendations that will emanate from the committee and all colleagues gathered here today. I would also at this time like the members of my team introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good morning, Danielle Salandi, Director of Legal at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I am Eric Jones, Project Manager at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, committee members. I am Curtis Augustine, Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Duke and members of your ministry. We'll move now to the Ministry of Planning and Development.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Rick Javed Ali. I'm the Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Planning and Development, and I'm joined here today
by Kima Gardner, Waste Management Specialist. Good morning, everyone.
And I'd also like to take the opportunity, Mr. Chair, to recognize our colleagues at the Environmental Management Authority and the Basel Convention Regional Center, the BCRC, who are part and parcel of the Ministry of Planning and Development's team. Thank you.
Okay. Would the director of the Basel Convention Regional Center introduce herself, please?
Hi, good morning, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. My name is Jewel Batchesing. I'm the director of the BCRC Caribbean. We're an organization that is serving the entire region, including Trinidad and Tobago, in managing chemicals and waste. I'm also accompanied by Ms. Marissa Charles. She's here.
Hello, good morning. Marissa Charles, Project Execution Officer at the BCRC Caribbean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ali. And we go now to the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and all other members of your committee, as well as my colleagues who are assembled here. My name is Raymond Sipol, and I am the Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Accompanying me this morning would be Dr. Surendra Danraj on my left. He is the Principal Medical Health Officer at the Point Fortin Borough Corporation. On my immediate right is Dr. Curtis Sonny, the Principal Medical Officer of Health at the Siparia Regional Corporation. And on my extreme right is Mr. Mahendra Tiwari, the Sanitation Foreman 3 at the Arima Borough Corporation. Also part of the Rural Development and Local Government team is Mr. Andre Arta, who is on a separate link. He is the Superintendent of Transport and Cleansing at the Port of Spain Borough Corporation. It is a pleasure to be here in these very important discussions, and we trust that our deliberations today will be fruitful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sipol. We go now to the Environmental Management Agency. Mr. Romano, you're muted.
Good morning, Chairman, members. The Environmental Management Authority welcomes the opportunity to contribute to these deliberations, which are very important for Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Hayden Romano, Managing Director, and I will allow my team, who is at the EMA's head office, to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Wayne Rajkumar, Manager, Technical Services, EMA.
Good morning, everyone. Vijaya Ramkalawan, Assistant Manager, Technical Services at the EMA.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Annalisa Arlen Benjamin, Project Manager at the EMA.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Romano and members of your team. And we go now to the to SWMCOL.
Chairman. Good morning, Chairman. My name is Ronald Milford. I am the Chairman of SWMCOL. The Board and Management of SWMCOL thank the committee for affording us the opportunity to address the committee in what we feel are pressing issues affecting SWMCOL that must be addressed in the public's interest, and what we at SWMCOL are doing to highlight some of the opportunities to address these issues. I'd now like to pass on to introduce the members of my team.
Morning, Chairman. Kevin Thompson, CEO.
Good morning, Chair. Morning, colleagues. Abigail Whitehall, Head, Program and Technical Services.
Good morning, Chair. Aisha Clark-Roach, General Manager, Operations.
Okay, thank you very much to the SWMCOL team. And I'd just like to go now to the Tobago House of Assembly, Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. Good morning to the members of the committee and all other persons present. The Tobago House of Assembly is pleased to be here to contribute to this very important conversation, and we remain steadfast in our mission to sustainably manage waste on the island of Tobago. I am Denise Toby Koshi, the Administrator at the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, and the members of my team will introduce themselves.
Good morning, Lucia Ibrahim, Project Engineer at the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection.
Good morning, Ricardo Bob, Public Health Inspector 4, Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection.
Good morning, everyone. Dion Bredlaw, Environmental Officer 2, under the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development of the Tobago House of Assembly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, members of the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. So we have gotten introductions from everybody, so we know each other. I'd just like to thank everyone for being here, for positively responding to our invitation to attend, and we look forward to very fruitful engagement with all the entities present here today. The floor is open for questioning, and I would like to, before any other member may go, I would like to start off our questions today with the issue of scavenging. Unfortunately, a couple of days ago, we learned of the loss of life of one of the on-site salvagers at the Forest Park landfill. It is indeed tragic, and I just thought we'll start off our conversations today in terms of the whole issue of scavenging and salvaging at the landfill sites. And this is directed to the different entities, not anyone in particular, maybe, or maybe more SWMCOL. But do we have in place any specific policies regarding on-site salvaging or scavenging? Do we have any definitive policies that have been established to guide this aspect, this issue?
Chairman, thank you for your question. Short answer is no. We have under discussion as part of moving towards an engineered landfill. We have some broad discussions and some broad outlines that have to meet with the approval of our board as to how we would treat with salvagers going forward. Our plans in the draft, and I could share them with you, relate to forming the salvagers into groups of cooperatives and treating with them, allowing some cooperation with them as they are in a organized unit as cooperatives to then interact with us at SWMCOL. My discussions with our board earlier this week, subsequent to the tragic loss, as I reported to the board on it, their discussion was maybe it is time for us to bring those plans forward. And so we are actively discussing whether or not we will now require, as a condition to salvage on the landfills, that you must belong to a cooperative. And then also as a consequence that you must undergo some JSC training in order to access the landfill. So those are very preliminary, but these are discussions that we are actively looking at as we consider the other immediate recommendations flowing from that incident report. And, and Chairman, if you may allow me to again express our condolences to the family of the deceased Mr. John Charles and to those affected by his death.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Milford, for that response. But bearing in mind that you're looking to initiate this policy and all of those things, you know, this is an issue that has been with us for quite some time. And are there any sort of temporary or interim measures with regards to security or trying to manage that situation? I mean, what is the approach that SWMCOL has at present? Because we also are aware that based on some of the responses from the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, you know, a lot of instances of as soon as the trucks enter the landfill area, you know, they are boarded by the salvagers, and they also create problems in that regard. Any interim measures that you all have in place to try to manage this situation?
Sure, I'd like to speak to that as well, Chairman. This is an intractable problem that has been with us for several decades. And we at SWMCOL have been looking at it holistically in terms of dealing with it. We will not be here proposing simple solutions to complex problems, because I think the committee will well see that the simple solutions will not work. What I can advise the committee in terms of work that we have done within the past year in particular, I can speak of work at the Forest Park landfill, where we have put security at the entrance to Kangarwood Road, and where we have both fined and discouraged trucks coming into our facility from having salvagers access them at the routes, at the entrance of the road coming off of the highway. Chairman, it is with some regret that I would have to advise that this has brought us limited success. While we have got the trucks to stop having the salvagers pull stuff off and throw it almost onto the highway, what we have now found is that just out of the line of sight of our security that we've put there, the salvagers are running in between the trucks, because we have fined the trucks, we have discussed with the contractors, we've worked with the police, and now the salvagers are actually running between the trucks, driving at 50 kilometers an hour to grab things off the trucks as they pass. And this is another very dangerous situation. So I would like to give the committee some sort of simple solution, but this is a problem that we at SWMCOL are dealing with. And every step that we take, we have to iterate, because it is not as simple as we will do one thing and we'll stop. We are very conscious of the fact that a number of the persons that are involved in this trade, and it is a big trade. I think at Beetham, we have between 40 and 50 people. At Forest Park, I think there's another 30 persons or so. It's a number of people who support their families and earn their livelihoods in this way. And we have to be very conscious of the steps that we take. We have in the past and on occasion banned salvaging, and this has again led to the trucks being stopped and a number of other things happening. So we are trying to contain the situation within the landfill so that it does not, bring a general danger to the other members of the public on the public roadways. And again, Chairman, just to give some better context, in Beetham, we are looking at something close to 90 plus hectares of land. At Forest Park, I think we're looking at about 40 plus hectares of land. It is not possible for SWMCOL to fence and to secure the entire perimeter of these sizes of land masses. And we are surrounded, and particularly in the case of Forest Park, we are surrounded by roadways. So even if you were to put a fence, it is a simple matter for persons who are in the business of collecting metal to simply take your fence and make that part of the trade. So it is a problem with a lot of texture. It is something that we continue to work on. And I have to advise the committee that there is no simple answer to this. What we have been looking at in the context of the engineered landfill, as we transition to a new way of dealing with waste in Trinidad and Tobago, we want to transition as well the salvagers into a new way of salvaging. We feel that this fits very well with the emerging policies around the national environment and how we handle recyclable waste that we would have discussed with the Ministry of Public Utilities, and where the Ministry of Public Utilities in the next month, I am advised, will be bringing broader consultations both to the public sector and to the private sector.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Now I do acknowledge it's a very complex, it's a complex situation that has been coming forward for many, many years. It has probably reached a point, it's a point where actually we're looking at loss of lives. And then we are not too well informed in terms of the public health concerns of those salvagers as well, the health situation with them and all of those things. Now, I'm trying to identify how could the committee, assist in this regard in terms of this particular inquiry. Has SWMCOL considered or is in the process of considering? I know you mentioned about the cooperatives and trying to incorporate the whole aspects of the salvagers into the pathway going down the road. But is there? You mentioned about some fines were imposed at some point in time. But in terms of legislation, are you all considering any specific legislation or amendment of any legislation to give, like SWMCOL, more teeth, legislative teeth, in order to manage the situation?
Chairman, we have advanced at another committee that what SWMCOL would like is that current laws that are in place be enforced. We have a litter act, we have litter wardens, yet we at SWMCOL struggle to see these things being effectively mobilized. We would like to see that legislation get enforced and enforced more regularly. We have a challenge, particularly at our Forest Park landfill, and we have discussed many times with the regional corporation. They have indicated that they are constrained with matters related to their public health officers. Again, we do not have control. The road is not ours. We have taken some steps, yes, but we really need those that have been empowered under legislation to treat with the various issues, to treat with those issues. And if that happens, we believe that we will be better supported in what we are doing. But further to that, Chairman, we need, I would say, as the continued support of this committee, as we have been getting from our line ministry, in pursuing the new engineered landfill at Forest Park and all of the anticipated changes that need to come as a consequence. We need material recovery facilities. We believe these can be staffed by the salvagers in a cooperative format. And we believe that this allows for a more circular economy, a more sustainable economy, and it creates, we think, solid entrepreneurial opportunities for the salvagers and better economic activity for the country as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Could I request on behalf of the committee that we would like to present as much of this issue and possible solutions in the report that we would be laying in Parliament. So I would like to request from you if we can get some details in writing about the policy that you are looking at that was outlined earlier on, and as much other details that you can provide in writing to us so that we'll be able to substantiate a part of action that we would come up with in our report. Yeah. Before we go to Member Padarat, who has some questions, I would also like to ask from Ms. Toby Koshi in Tobago, do you all have issues with scavenging? And then after her, we can find out from the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government regarding the Guapo landfill, if that problem extends to that landfill as well. But first, Ms. Toby Koshi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Public Health Inspector 4, Mr. Ricardo Bob, he will answer that question. He has all the details.
Chairman, good morning, everyone. Like SWMCOL, we don't have a policy in place. However, what we've done over the years is to have the salvagers organized. So that cooperative idea is a very good idea. They don't have a cooperative, but we've asked them to organize themselves into a group. And so any interaction in the landfill, we will look at the team leader. We also have security at the landfill, which also assists them. So far over the years, that situation has been working quite well. We have not had any untoward experiences since having them organized. The challenge we may have is probably in the community when stuff is removed in terms of adequate provisions for storing, especially scrap metal, before they are removed to whichever provider may take them. But in terms of the operations at the landfill, we have not had any untoward incidents in at least the last 4 to 5 years since I've been managing the section.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bob. Mr. Sipo?
Yes,
that's the Guapo landfill, yeah.
Yes, we have Dr. Dan Raj from the Fortin Corporation, who will be providing information pertaining to the Guapo landfill.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Definitely we would have scavenging issues, probably not on the scale as outlined at the other sites. We would have implemented certain access control measures, and we do all have our own municipal police, doing their patrols. But that is pretty much what we have in place. And whilst it does control to some extent, it does not eliminate that issue. So it is something that is ongoing, and we look forward to, a more overarching way to harmonize that service.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to Member Padarat, as I have Mr. Sipol, at the last inquiry, you were not here, and we did explore the capacity issues at the other landfills, the Beetham, Guanapo, Forest Park, and also we discussed the capacity matter regarding the Tobago, the Studley Park landfill. But in terms of Guapo, would you like to inform us as to, in terms of the capacity of the Guapo landfill, where we are?
Again, Dr. Lanraj will provide that information.
Sure. So we have a 20-acre parcel of land that is allocated for landfill usage. 6 acres of which is used by another entity for hazardous waste remediation. And all that parcel that we do use, we do, have partitioning, and we would try to cover over as best as we can the active sites, and we have sites that are sitting. And once those areas can be reused, we do explore those options. So it's pretty much a cycling of the area that we do have, and so far it suffices the needs of the inputs that we do get. Of course, in time, because we have been seeing over the past few years, an increase of about 1 to 2% in the volume of waste that comes to us. And, at some point, we would have to have other methods to really accommodate that at our site. But for the time being, we are able to manage based on the inputs that we do get.
All right, but based on your current or projected, the amount of waste that comes into the landfill, would you want to project a figure in terms of capacity, like going for the future, like whether you have 3 years, 5 years in hand, or where you are with regards to that?
I would hazard maybe a 10 to 15 year sort of horizon, but of course we would want to implement other measures like engineered landfills. So that, and of course, if we do put in other measures of waste reduction and stuff, that would extend that horizon even further. So we look forward to whatever measure we do come out of this.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Danraj. The floor is open for other members. Member Padarat.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if you would permit a few questions to SWMCOL in particular. I was a little taken aback by the response provided by SWMCOL in relation to your queries about their policies as it relates to salvaging. In the submission provided by SWMCOL, SWMCOL indicated that while they try to follow international best practices, a lot of the challenges that they face, and to quote the submission, a lot of the challenges they face has to do with a lack of support from enabling legislation. So while I understand the fines, the penalties, etc., in terms of what currently exists on the statute books, part of the submission of SWMCOL themselves says that a lot of the challenges that they face is because there's no supporting legislation, and as you put it, nothing in the law to give them teeth. So I'm trying to reconcile what was said by SWMCOL and what is actually in their submission. So if they can clarify that to start off with, I will be happy.
Chairman, through you, thank you for the question, member, and then thanks for the opportunity to clarify. I think there may be some lack of clarity in how I spoke to the issue, but my understanding was the chairman was speaking about the issue of compliance related to the salvagers. I also spoke in my response about the support that we are getting from the Ministry of Public Utilities related to public consultations. And out of those consultations, our expectation is, given the direction of the ministry, that legislation will be forthcoming to support our activities. So the national environmental policy, or a broader recycling policy, work is being done by the ministry on those fronts, and the guidance that has been given to us is that we should expect in due course that we would have some legislative support to having a proper framework related to matters related to SWMCOL. And does that address your question, a member?
Yes. It does provide some clarity in terms of what was provided and what was said earlier. The second issue that I would like to raise is the issue of the annual subvention received by SWMCOL. I know that in the last fiscal year that SWMCOL has received a substantially less amount, and I wanted to know how that has impacted on operations. I'll tell you why. In my own constituency of Princestown, we have had a tremendous amount of difficulty over the last 2 years in terms of garbage collection, etc. So I wanted to have an idea of how your subvention this fiscal year being one of the lowest in terms of the amounts you've received, how that has impacted on your operations and therefore impacted on the lives of citizens.
Chairman, through you, Member, this is a tough fiscal environment, and we are, as you know, a public entity, and we depend on the state. So it is, but we find ourselves in a place where we try to deal more with what we have than what we have not gotten. So we've had to make choices, that is correct. But we think that how we've been able to navigate those choices is by looking for funding external to the government. And we've had some success accessing funding out of the Canada CARICOM expert deployment mechanism. We've had some success accessing funds out of the Netherlands. And so we will continue to look at those kinds of opportunities where there is a shortfall from central government. But more particularly, member, SWMCOL is not generally engaged in municipal garbage collection. We are the repository of, we are in effect the municipal corporations collect the garbage and we receive it on their behalf. So we don't actually provide that service. That service is normally provided by the municipal corporations, and they would be the ones better poised to speak to those particular challenges that you would have mentioned. But for us at SWMCOL, our approach is we understand that there's a tough fiscal environment. We work with what we have been given, whatever the amount is, and we will continue to identify opportunities where we can access additional funding, because we believe that the challenges that we have are serious and that we need to put best efforts into finding funding. And the government is not the only source of funding that is available to us.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Member Padarat, you have any more questions? Or?
Yes, just one follow-up question based on something Mr. Thompson said, just for clarity. Can I proceed?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, in light of the answer you provided with respect to the municipal corporations, I just wanted to clarify. I know in the past, SWMCOL was responsible for negotiating the contracts between service providers. Can you indicate for the regional corporations, can you indicate whether or not that arrangement still exists, or whether or not the municipal corporations are now responsible for the engagement of these contracts with service providers?
Thank you, Member. Chairman, through you. Member, we had been asked prior to provide that service, and we have done it, and we will continue to do it once we are asked. My understanding is of the last time that we were asked, there was some question raised legally. I believe we had the question was ruled in the government's favor, in our favor in the first instance, and it was not ruled in our favor in the second instance. I'm not clear, and I would have to refer and perhaps get back to you in writing on whether or not that is being pursued, an appeal is being pursued in that regard. But we are mandated by the government to provide support in terms of waste management technology and know-how, and wherever we are asked to do so, we would do that. And if some other entity is asked, then we would step aside.
Sure. Mr. Thompson, you would appreciate that these decisions have a tremendous impact on the day-to-day lives of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And I would appreciate if we can have a clearer answer. I know you may not have the information in front of you, and if you can give us the undertaking to provide it in terms of what is the status of SWMCOL in providing these negotiations, or being the go-between between the service providers and the municipal corporations. So if I can have that in writing, I'll be very grateful, so that we could have a clearer idea, clearer picture of who is responsible for what and where the breakdown is when the breakdown occurs.
Member, I'm Chairman again through you. Member, I'm happy to provide that response, but I would point out that as of now, it is under the auspices of the Ministry of Rural Development that these contracts are handled, and they are the ones that would have invited us to provide that service to them. So the question is really better directed at the Ministry of Rural Development as to when and how contracts and who would be doing the contracts. We are a service provider as it would.
Sure. Mr. Thompson, then let me be abundantly clear in that regard. Can you say whether or not this arrangement presently exists, or it's in the remit of the municipal corporations themselves? That's the point I'm trying to get at. So while I understand that rural development will engage you, you must have an idea whether rural development has engaged you over the last financial year.
They have not, I can answer that directly, member. They have not engaged us over the last financial year. But again, it is, if they engage us tomorrow, then I would answer yes, and other than that, they have not.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you, Member Padarat and Mr. Thompson. Member Sagram Singh Suklal, would you?
Thank
you
you.
have some questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. So, Chair, my question, of course, through you, I just want to jump into a very critical question you would have asked relative to legislation as it relates to, of course, dealing with scavenging and salvaging. An important point was made by SWMCOL relative to the organization being currently involved, or at least there's information that there's currently public consultation that the line ministry is engaged in relative to creating a legislative framework, of course, that hopefully would treat with these issues. I just want to take the opportunity, of course, Chair, based on the ministry in which I sit in, to just impress on all of the parties that are currently present. Consultation is critical to the creation of laws, and it is so important that if this consultation is indeed in gear, that this is the opportunity for each organization that sit at this table to ventilate their concerns, whether it's through written or oral submissions, when these consultations are taking place, because of course it's through the consultation you can then create a policy. The ministry can then create a proper and sound policy which can drive legislative reformation that will of course tackle some of these two areas that you mentioned, Chair, which is scavenging and salvaging, principally because we are seeing people are losing their lives over it. So I just wanted to just start by just respectfully, Chair, through you, and I'm saying this, Chair, only because where I sit as a minister and being involved in consultation, I have seen so many times where we reach out to stakeholders regardless of what piece of legislation we're working on, and the challenge that we often face is the feedback from those critical parties who can certainly assist in the creation of better laws. So I just felt, just to use this platform, just to, reiterate to the critical people who are sitting here, the importance of actively voicing your opinions, from the regional corporations straight through to all the organizations that sit here, in voicing your opinion, because certainly we need all hands on deck in creating legislation that will redound to the benefit of our population. So, Chair, that was just my 2 pence on the legislative part. As it relates to my line of questioning, Chair, of course, through you, I have some questions to put to the Ministry of Rural Development. But before I do that, since my colleague, Member Padarat, was already addressing some concerns with SWMCOL, if I may start by just asking a few questions to SWMCOL respectfully, Chair, as it relates to the Guanapo landfill in particular. Now, Chair, in preparation for this meeting, I came across an article. It was Wednesday. It's Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. That it was in the Guardian, where SWMCOL indicated SWMCOL working on resolving fire at Guanapo landfill. So there's one article that deals with the fire situation, and then I'm looking that there are also issues I know in the public domain relative to waterways and so on that are being affected there. So if I may just jump into the question relative to the Guanapo landfill, to the members of SWMCOL, I understand that the Guanapo landfill has been cleaned up, I believe, using a leachate treatment plan. So I don't pretend to be a scientist, and I wouldn't pretend to understand exactly what this is. But what I want to know for the benefit of the listening public, can SWMCOL state what are the environmental concerns, or for the benefit of the listening public, can you state what environmental concerns did the risk assessment reveal? So I'm not sure if I'm clear in that question, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, member. What I would like to do to add to what you have asked is, at the same time, while SWMCOL is addressing the remediation measures that were identified, if we can also get an update on the progress with the respective remedial items as to where we are with those items.
Certainly.
Yeah, Mr. Milford.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Through you, I would like to pass on that question on to our Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Milford. Chairman, member, at Guanapo, as you've quite rightly identified, as with all landfills, as a consequence of their existence, there exist risks. I think that SWMCOL has taken a very proactive stance with respect to this. We have partnered with the UWI in the first instance, and they did a study related to those risks. Then we partnered with the UN and through the Ministry of Planning and Development, where we have done a remediation plan for Guanapo, anticipating its full closure at some point in the future once we have the engineered landfill set. And more to your question, member, if I have it correctly, I think you want to speak to the actual risks to the surrounding Burgesses, if I understand your question correctly.
Correct. As it relates to, let's say, diseases and, let's say, cases of cancer, those things. Yeah.
Yes, and the member would appreciate that we collect on behalf of the municipal corporations all of the waste that comes from the household. So that does include household hazardous waste in the form of batteries or paint and that kind of thing. And that, if it is not properly treated with, can pose some threat to human health. But we're happy to report on the basis of this study done, I believe it would have been 2 years ago now, and it would have been reported through, and we are thankful again to our partners at the BCRC who are on this call, and the Ministry of Planning, who would have helped us access funding through the Global Environment Facility, and consultants out of the Netherlands were able to help us ascertain the extent of those risks, and thankfully those risks were found to be minimal. In terms of water quality surrounding the landfill, it was found basically that the farmers, particularly the pig farmers, pose a greater threat to human health in the area, and as a consequence, they have advised that water surrounding the landfill is not really recommended for fishing or bathing or cooking. We have placed signs, and we have advised the residents of the outcome of the study. We have done so again Member SWMCOL, I share your concern about consultations, because when we went back to the community to report on our findings, it was not well attended. And we did in multiple sessions go back to the community to advise of the findings, what we had found. Some did attend, but we were not happy about the turnout. However, we have placed signs and we have advised as much as possible that the water should be avoided for those purposes. But if, again, it's not within SWMCOL's remit to treat with agricultural farms and animals and so on, that we do not have, that power is not within our remit. So we have simply advised what we have found during the various studies. And more importantly, remember, we have had, as one of the outcomes of the various studies that we've done, the closure of Guanapo, we have started that remediation work. The work that we can do today, we have started, as you mentioned, the leachate pond. We have done the leachate ponds. We are in the process of upgrading that leachate pond by having additional filtration so that we can put, the water that comes out of the landfill. And a particular concern to us is the rainy season, particularly in the rainy season, that we can ensure that what is coming out of the landfill is of, potable quality coming out of the landfill. So we continue to take all prudent steps, and we are well supported by our board and our ministry in that regard.
Member Chairman, through you, I'd just like to add, Member SWMCOL, that the only long-term, medium long-term solution to this problem is with the introduction of the engineered landfill at Forest Park, and thereby closing these landfills that are way beyond their life cycle. Otherwise, this will continue. These issues that keep cropping up all the time will continue to happen. And it's imperative that the committee, members of the public, understand clearly that this is a major issue that we have as a country, and we do have a solution to address it by the year 2025, and that is the introduction of our engineered landfill.
Chair, I want to really take this opportunity to commend SWMCOL and its board and administration for what you all have been doing, because, I'm happy that your CEO would have immediately jumped into studies that as early as 2 years ago that was conducted with your partners relative to truly understanding what are some of the environmental concerns, issues, and more so, I know in the CEO's submissions, you also indicated that you've started acting on, so you've had your findings and you've already commissioned, putting processes in place to act on the recommendations coming out. So I must take this opportunity to highly commend SWMCOL for being proactive, and just, of course, as a committee member sitting here and just as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, to continue to urge you all to continue those studies, because the science, of course, is what will guide us, and of course guide you in being able to better manage and of course obtain your mandate, achieve your mandate. Now, I'm very happy that the chairman, Mr. Medford, would have raised the issue about the newly engineered landfill, and of course that being the way to go. To that end, Chair, of course, through you, if I could now turn to the Ministry of Rural Development, because I actually have some questions as it relates to those landfills. So to the Ministry of Rural Development, participants, welcome. As the SWMCOL would have indicated, which I mean, again, as I said, I'm not a scientist, but at least in the reading of all the literature, I believe for myself, probably this is the way we have to go if we want to save and protect and insulate our communities from being affected by the long-term and short-term environmental issues that arise out of these landfills. So to that end, to the ministry, what I want to know is, were the plans for restructuring the landfills shared with the ministry, and more so your corporations? to the Ministry of Rural Development, the plans for restructuring the landfills. Was there that engagement between the ministry and the corporations? Why am I? This is because you remember I spoke about consultation, and I believe that is critical. So if you could address that for me, I'd be grateful.
Thank you, member, for your question. I would want to ask my colleague, Dr. Sonny, who is involved in this kind of dialogue, being our ministry's representative. Okay, so Dr. Sonny will venture a response. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for being in this meeting. Could you just repeat the question, please?
No problem. Welcome, Dr. Sunny, and thank you for participating. The first question is, I just wanted to know, just get a sense as to whether or not the plans, right, for restructuring landfills, whether those plans, it was a collaborative effort, whether the plans were shared with the ministry and more so the corporations.
Those would be the plans of SWMCOL, because they would be the body designated to manage landfills in Trinidad and Tobago. Our role is basically as collectors and deliverers of the waste to the appropriate sites.
Yeah, Member Sunny, I think what the member Shagran Singh is trying to get at is that we're going to centralize the landfill at Forest Park. So it would be a central landfill. But if in the development of the project, and the establishment of the landfill as it comes up, I think she's trying to find out what level of consultation there was with the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Because you all are engaged in the, not the landfill itself, but other than the Guapo landfill, but in terms of the whole process of collection and getting it to the landfill. And the engineered landfill is also based on what what has been referred to as transfer stations being set up, so that the corporations would have to get their solid waste to the transfer stations. All those aspects of it. Was there any consultation? I think, member, is that what you're trying to find out?
Certainly, Chair, because you hit the nail on its head, right? To my mind, there's also another question: how will the proposed phasing out, for example, of Beetham, Forest Park, and Guanapo landfills impact on the corporation's collection of waste? And that is basically, so that's why I wanted to ascertain before I jumped into that question. Before in this whole new engineered landfill, that of course SWMCOL, I understand that's their ticket item, but I wanted to know whether or not at the end of the day this new landfill is going to affect the corporations in one way or the other. So I just wanted to gather, as you would have said, Chair, whether or not there was indeed that whether or not there was any consultation at all between the ministry and the corporations with SWMCOL.
Okay. I have been with the ministry for the last 6 years, and the appropriate corporations, I would have imagined, would have been consulted with SWMCOL, but I don't have any specific dates and time. In terms of the whole process of the engineering landfills, as I said, I believe the appropriate corporations, take for example, Forest Park would treat with Cuba and Shogunas and the closer corporations. Beetham would be treating with Port of Spain and Diego Martin. My corporation, Siparia, we will treat with Guapo landfill. So our landfill is not under the grid of SWMCOL. So we didn't have a discussion about the engineering landfills as far as I'm aware. But I am sure the appropriate municipal corporation would have had discussions with SWMCOL But I think SWMCOL might best answer that part.
Understood. But okay, so on the point of, well, Chairman had raised an issue as well. How do you, from the ministry's point of view, right? How do you envision that these engineered landfills will impact on, let's say, the corporation's collection of waste, given the current challenges with commuting to landfills and, let's say, its opening and closing hours?
Yeah. Mr. Sipol, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am happy to hear that SWMCOL is in the process of developing these engineered landfill sites. However, there must be some plan or some transition plan in place which would facilitate the continuous disposal of solid waste, right? While the development of these engineered sites are taking place. As far as the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government is concerned, we are not aware of such plans, but we look forward to engaging in dialogue with SWMCOL to ensure that there's continuity in the disposal of solid waste to the landfill sites. And we would like to be kept in the loop so that we can advise our corporations of these impending changes and developments that are planned.
So to be clear, your recommendation to the committee is that, of course, there is a transitioning period, even when we move towards the implementation, when there is a move, towards the implementation of these engineered landfills. Your recommendation would be, of course, if I understand that there is this transitioning period, one, and two, of course, there's continued dialogue with SWMCOL and the ministry, so that certainly corporations throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago can at least be sensitized into the new operations that will take place. Yeah?
That's correct, member, but I would also like to add that the development of these engineered facilities should be accompanied by other strategies as far as the reuse and the recycling of waste. We recognize and the statistics tell us that a significant percentage of waste going to landfill sites can be meaningfully utilized. So we also have to consider this reality and make provision to enable us to look at different strategies that deals with the waste disposal.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sipol. Yes, I know that the ministry was not represented at the first inquiry we had meeting, but we did have some discussions regarding recycling and disposal of waste, which we will be addressing a little later down in this particular inquiry. But just to, because I know based on your statement there, of course, the Ministry of Public Utilities and SWMCOL would want to come in, Ministry of Planning and Development as well. But we will be probably dealing with the whole matter of recycling. We got some information last time, but we'll have to revisit it, and we put it a little later down in our discussions today. Member Sagram Singh, you have any more questions for?
Yeah, I'll just ask one more for now, since we're on the new engineered landfills to the ministry again. How will the phasing out of the Beetham, Forest Park and Guanapo landfills specifically impact the cost of scavenging services contracted by the corporations?
Okay, thanks again, member, for your question. I would like to refer to Dr. Danraj for a response, please.
Good morning again, members. So there will be impact if the landfills and the usage, that cartage to a centralized site would impact financially. But if, as mentioned earlier, we do reduce the volume, it's a volume game. If we do reduce the volume that has to be carted, it can be balanced, and it will take creative solutions, and that's where the consultation moving forward to have a truly developed plan for rollout with interim measures put in place.
Thank you very much for that response, Chairman. That is the extent of my questions for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Member Sagram Singh. As I said, we would want to look a little more in detail of the question of recycling, and also maybe I would still like to come back probably a bit later on just to close up on the matter of the engineered landfill. But before we go there, I'd just like to bring in the EMA and as well the Ministry of Planning and Development into the discussion. And in terms of the environmental aspects, particularly with the landfills and the monitoring aspect, the regulatory aspect, the monitoring aspect of landfills, I know that I understand that there is a degree of air quality assessment, monitoring and assessment done for the BTEM plant. My question is, in terms of the other landfills, the landfill in Tobago, the Studley Park landfill, the Guapo Forest Park, and Guanapo, what sort of monitoring is done there by EMA with regards to air quality, not only air quality, but other aspects of monitoring that you all are doing?
Good morning. Good morning again, Chairman, members. Yes, as we said in the last time, there is a air quality meter in close proximity to the BTEM landfill. So we're able to get almost immediate real-time results from any untoward activities that take place at BTEM. In AREMA, we do have another meter, and we have one in Signal Hill in Tobago, which is nowhere close to the Studley Park landfill. But in the future, we will be getting a meter closer to the Studley Park area. And we are in the process of installing a meter in the Point Fortin area. So we should be able to get some results from the Guapo landfill. The closest station to the Guanapo landfill will be the AREMA station. And in terms of the Forest Park landfill, the closest station will be the Point Lisa station. So we don't have, so that the proximity is not great. With respect to our other rules, which is the air pollution rules and the water pollution rules, SWMCOL is in the process of getting registered and with respect to both rules. And they have a responsibility to supply us with information. SWMCOL has given us a schedule in terms of how they will provide the information. Their major challenge has been a financial challenge, and I think, Chairman, if one thing that needs to come out from this inquiry is clearly the need for more funding for SWMCOL to complete its mandate, because we're talking about engineered landfills, we're talking about provision of information with respect to the quality of the environment in close proximity to the landfill. And all these, for SWMCOL to get the data, will require some element of funding. And therefore, I think, when we're looking at human health and the environment, it's important that the funding is provided to SWMCOL to provide the information to the Environmental Management Authority so that we can make our decisions with respect to human health and the environment, and of course, ensure that we can deal with environmental degradation before it takes place. And the only thing, as the member said, we need to get the scientific data, and to get the scientific data, there is the need for funding.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romano. Before I ask you anything further, I'd just like to welcome Member Kennedy Richards here, who has joined us. Welcome, member. And yes, I understand, Mr. Romano, what you're saying, but in terms of the funding as well for SWMCOL to fulfill its mandate. But in terms of the whole question of registration, and then if you could shed some light, either yourself or the Ministry of Planning Development, in terms of what that registration incorporates, because from what you have submitted to the committee, there are several permits as well that are involved that is required of SWMCOL in order to probably get that registration status. And considering the culture and the history and all these chronic issues coming forward, are we putting SWMCOL in a really tough situation where they have to rectify certain things in order to reach a certain standard? But in order to get to that standard, to be able to procure the necessary registration and permits, they are sort of caught between a rock and a hard place?
I don't think we're putting them in a difficult situation. I think we're putting them in a situation where they will be able to operate in accordance with best practice. So, I would start by talking a little bit about their what I would call legacy project, the engineered landfill in Forest Park. They have started the process. We have looked at the application for the certificate of environmental clearance for that project. And the project, based on the nature, the scale, and the location, has gone to an environmental impact assessment. As part of the environmental impact assessment process, and we expect that SWMCOL will get the terms of reference for that EIA by July 11th, there will be a lot of work for SWMCOL to do, including lots of public consultation. So I don't think the regional corporations or anybody else should be concerned, because as part of the EIA process for this new engineered landfill, which is where Trinidad and Tobago has to go if we want to be in line with best practice, there must be significant public consultation. What I will do is in terms of the other permits, the water pollution permits, the waste permit, which they will need to acquire as the waste rules finally became law in Trinidad and Tobago on May 31st of this year, and the air pollution permit. I will allow my team to give the committee a bit more details, Chairman, with respect to those permits and SWMCOL's status. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Romano. Yeah, members of the team.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to the source registration under the air pollution rules. SWMCOL would have, as Mr. Romano indicated, would have applied for source emitter registration for all their major landfills. The main challenge has been with provide feedback to the EMA with that information. So, and SWMCOL have given a schedule of when those information will be submitted to the EMA. So that is ongoing with respect to the air pollution rules. With respect to the water pollution rules, there is no definite point source from the major landfills. And the major problem there is the management of the leachate, and we would have had some information from SWMCOL about the project in terms of remediating and treating with the leachate at Guanapo. Under the waste management rules, which has recently been implemented over the next couple of months, SWMCOL will have to register as a handler generator of solid waste under those rules. So those are some of the things that we could speak about at the moment. So SWMCOL is involved and has been interacting with the EMA in acquiring the various permits and registration status.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rajkumar. But I can't help but ask a question. The same approach with SWMCOL, is that being used with the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government in terms of the Guapo landfill?
Yeah, the Guapo landfill, as the colleague indicated from rural and local government, there is an operator adjacent to the Point Fortin. The Point Fortin Borough Corporation manages the Guapo landfill, and a portion of that land there is managed by a private entity called Earth Environmental. They have been issued a CEC back in 2002 with the EMA, and they have approvals from the borough to operate that on a portion of that acreage. And the EMA, the major issues at that land, operations at Earth relates to bushfires over the years. And they have submitted reports in relation to how to address and mitigate fires at their operations. But the landfill at Guapo would have predated the CC rules.
Okay. Thank you. I'd just like to remind members of the committee that if you have questions, please use the raise hand feature, so we'll be able to. I'll be able to entertain those questions. Before we move off from the Ministry of Planning and Development and also the EMA, this question may have some inputs from the Ministry of Public Utilities. In terms of the multilateral agreements that we have signed on to, or conventions that we have signed on to, in the context of all of what we are discussing about the engineered landfills, the recycling, the environmental issues with regards to air pollution, water pollution, and those multilateral agreements or conventions, what is the impact of those? Do we have those agreements impacting on the discussions we are having here today? And issues that have to be taken in account as we chart a way forward?
Chair, I'm going to pass this question on to Kima.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the question. So in terms of your query, I can speak broadly to two main multilateral environmental agreements, or MEAs. So we have the Basel Convention, which looks at the control of the transboundary movement of hazardous waste, essentially the movement of waste across different territories. Now, one of the main tenets of the Basel Convention is treatment of waste as close as possible to the source of generation. And so the aim is to try to develop national capacity to treat waste locally to avoid its actual export and, of course, the affiliated negative impacts to other territories. And so the development of the sanitary engineered landfill is very much in line with what falls under the Basel Convention in terms of the requirements as well. Coming out of the convention, however, because it also deals, as I mentioned before, with hazardous waste, would be the need to find mechanisms to also treat for those waste streams. Under the convention, there are also technical guidelines which are developed, which are used to provide information or feedback, particularly for the purposes of developing countries in matters such as this. And so in the case of sanitary engineered landfill survey, at the recently concluded conference of the parties for the Basel Convention, there was actually an update made to the technical guidelines in relation to the sanitary engineered landfill. So essentially, this provides a resource as well in terms of ensuring best environmental practices and best available techniques and implementation and development of such mechanisms. So that's one convention. There's also another convention called the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants, or POPs. The POPs are a group of chemicals that are man-made. They are highly mobile, they're very toxic, they cause impacts such as cancers, etc. And they last very long in the environment, as the name suggests, persistent. And so as part of the fulfillment of the obligations under the Stockholm Convention, we would have conducted inventories on the various types of POPs. One of the main groups in that regard are unintentionally produced POPs or used POPs, which are generated during combustion activities, for example, activities at landfills. And so from the last inventory, we'll be able to acquire figures in terms of the UPOP generation nationally in the country. And coming out of that, we would have then developed a national implementation plan to try to minimize the risk posed by these UPOPs. So this National Implementation Plan, or NIP, is essentially a roadmap that is developed to eliminate or reduce the impacts of these POPs nationally. And so we see that overlap happening in terms of, again, the link to the landfills. Coming out of, for example, Mr. Thompson would have mentioned the interaction with the ministry in this regard. So we would have also been the national focal point for the projects at the Guanapo landfill, which sought to find that scientific information to feed into the fulfillment of the NIP itself, and of course, by extension, the Stockholm Convention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Bajasingh. Now, you did mention about the question of the word cancer came up and all the thing. Are there any specific studies that point us to information in terms of landfills and diseases such as cancer and other terminal diseases? And also, it also brings us to the whole question of the management of hazardous waste. And maybe after you respond, I could, or maybe you can respond and then I'll raise the issue of hazardous waste and management. And I see Member Richards have his hands up as well. So after we get a response on the question of the study, linking landfills with diseases, then we can go to Member Richards. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before I proceed, this is Kima Gardner from Ministry of Planning.
Oh, sorry.
Not a problem. Not a problem. So in terms of your query, there would, of course, be studies at international scale. Nationally, there have not been any conclusive or definitive links in terms of cancer causes or links in terms of the landfill operations. But internationally, of course, there would be studies. The Stockholm Convention, as I mentioned before, was developed because of this risk posed by these chemicals. And there is research, and the way the chemicals are listed under the convention, it's based on fulfilling certain risk criteria, which involves that risk to human health as well, including diseases such as cancer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gardner. My apologies for getting that wrong before again. Any other of the entities here aware of any linkages with landfill and actual diseases here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Chairman, from SWMCOL, just to support what Kima has said, while there are studies denoting that link internationally, we, in addition to other studies done in Trinidad by persons independent of SWMCOL, we also conduct yearly medicals for all our landfill staff, and we have not seen any negative correlation related to their health and their occupation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Member Richards?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, let me apologize for being late unavoidably. So, my question is more surrounding energy and utilizing waste of these landfill sites to create energy. Any plans or any vision towards creating your trash into something more, into energy, into renewable energy? Anything on that?
Okay, thank you, Member Richards. Any of the entities would want to respond to that? It's the whole thing about the waste to energy, conversion of waste to energy. Are any of the entities engaged in looking at that, or aware of any efforts? I'm not sure if the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries has done any work on it, but we don't have any representatives from that ministry here. So if any of the entities would like to respond.
Chairman, SWMCOL would like to speak to the issue through you. We have signed last year an MOU with the National Gas Company looking at taking landfill gas, which is composed primarily of methane and carbon dioxide as its main components. And we have conducted a pre-feasibility study, which has produced a positive result, and we are moving to the next phase, where we intend, once we get the requisite approval of our board and ministry, to move forward with a pilot and continue other studies to support moving from waste to energy. And I think that is what the member is speaking to. So we are in action on this as well. So I hope that answers the member's question.
Chairman, through you, if I could just add, there are within our jurisdiction here countries that are looking at the incinerating of waste and turning that into energy. Those are in very preliminary stages. It is at this point in time very expensive in some cases, as we had demonstrated in the document that was submitted to us and we responded. It can be as much as $40 US to $100 US, where we are right now, in order to a ton, where right now we are somewhere around $13 US a ton. That does not mean, however, that there's opportunity, because there are countries we are aware in Europe, for instance, that have working facilities. So that is something that we will take into consideration in the future. As the CEO just mentioned, primarily right now we are looking at the conversion of the methane gas that comes out of the BTM and our landfills, and converting that into possibly energy for use in some of the plants that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, thank you, Member Richards.
Yes, Chairman. One follow-up question. I cannot remember who it was, but I think it was the SWMCOL team who said that they were considering putting a air quality meter in the Guapo landfill site. Do they have a time frame for the completion of that project? And is it an extremely costly thing why it was not done yet?
Yeah, I think it was Mr. Romano who had mentioned that.
Yeah, it's not, Chairman, through you, it's not at the Guanapo site. It's at and my team will have to help me here. There's an air pointer being established in Point Fortin, and I think it's at one of the secondary schools. So Wayne or Vijaya, you want to help me, please, and we can see when it will happen. The reason why it didn't happen before, we only started the installation of these air quality monitoring meters in 2015. And really what we are attempting to do is to provide an air quality monitoring network throughout Trinidad and Tobago, a real-time monitoring network. The 4 meters that are installed at this point in time only came down for the first time since they were installed over the last couple of days because of the adverse weather conditions. We didn't want them to be impacted. So they should be back and running in the next couple of days. But the team will say exactly where the next meter is, where in Point Fortin the meter will be placed. And I mean, I think it can also give you some details in terms of the plans for the other meters that will be established in Trinidad and in Tobago. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romano.
Yeah, so just a point of clarification. So the EMA would have first set up ambient air quality monitoring stations in the Point Lisas area as far back as, I believe, 2006, 2008, thereabouts. So we had some stations there, and those were replaced by the more compact stations that came on stream in around 2014. There's a station that is going to be the Point Fortin East Secondary School. That's the one that is going to be located there in, I would believe in, is it later this year or by next year? The other stations are Arima is at Holy Cross, which is close to Calvary Hill in Arima. So those are the two that the MD Hayden Romano mentioned. So Point Fortin East Secondary and Holy Cross College in Arima. Those are the two that are coming on stream. There are others in Tobago. I'm not sure about the others in Tobago at this point in time, but those are the ones that are coming on stream in the very near future.
Okay, thank you.
Jay, if I could just have 2 follow-up questions to that again. I don't want to take too much of time again, but it says that's Point Fortin East. But what is the distance from the landfill site to Point Fortin East, and how does that affect the quality of monitoring that you would get? Because if you say you put it in Point Fortin East, you're passing at least 3 or 4 villages before you actually between the Point Fortin East School and the Guapo landfill site. So does that affect the readings? Because I think that is about at least 5 kilometers or more. So if you have done the measurement, so does that affect anything in terms of the readings that you will get? 1, and 2, with respect to the landfill sites, in terms of, I know it's a relationship with SWMCOL and the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government with the Point Fortin Borough Corporation. But who is responsible for the general maintenance of let's say the roadway? Because I'm a bit intimate with the landfill site, and my understanding is that a lot of people wouldn't reach to the tipping point due to the conditions to get to that point. So they tend to dump way before that point. So is SWMCOL taking that into consideration with respect to the maintenance and the continued upgrade of the roadway?
Okay, before SWMCOL answers, Chair, let me be clear. The EMA is not establishing an air quality network only to monitor landfill sites. So the positioning of the air quality monitors may, as in the case of BTM, give us good information on the air quality of the BTM landfill, or it may not, as in the case of the one in Point Fortin, give us any information or maybe very little information on the landfill in Guapo. The responsibility for the monitoring of the landfills and the three by SWMCOL, Forest Park, Guanapo, and Beetham. The responsibility for monitoring air quality and environmental quality rests with the owner or the operator of the landfill, which in this case is SWMCOL. With respect to Studley Park, that will be THA. And with respect to the Guapo landfill, well, I mean, as far as we are aware, it is the Point Fortin Borough Corporation. So that is who is responsible for monitoring the air quality. And I know, I mean, they have had some challenges. We are working with them with respect to the challenges. I mean, but of course, now with the waste rules in place, public authorities as well as private individuals will have to comply with the waste rules. And the rest of the question, I will leave for rural development.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. Before we go to SWMCOL in terms of the road conditions at the, I think approaching the Guapo landfill is what Member Richards was asking about. I see, Mr. Cipoll, you have had your hand up for quite a while now.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. Dr. Danraj wanted to contribute to this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Richards. Just getting back to your original question on the waste energy. I think when I had looked at that issue probably about 2 years back, and really the genesis was because for the Guapo site, it is compared to the others, the smallest, one of the smaller sites. And thinking forward, what were the options? And definitely an engineered landfill site would be quite appropriate. But there is a lot of potential in a waste energy facility, as you sort of indicated. And I would have found a paper that was a research paper done in 2009, and the topic was waste energy in the Trinidad and Tobago scenario. I do not discount at all what SWMCOL has said because 2009 is dated. But even in that paper, based on the type of combustion, be it the traditional combustion, incineration, or plasma gasification, you could have a lot of benefits that, the initial one is going to be reduction in that volume of waste. And when you think about it as well, you could then have of the ash that is produced. I think the figure that is touted is about 80% reduction in volume. And then out of that, you can then have further segregation of the ash into metals and other products that are not combusted. From a health point of view, and we would always be concerned, the fumes that are produced out of it, they are not just vented into the atmosphere. So as well, those sort of volatile, those sort of fumes that do emanate out of it can be scrubbed in further treatment processes to further reduce any impact on the environment. And those sites that I've seen around the world do bring a lot of environmental benefits and for the surrounding communities. But the biggest thing as well, based on the incineration process, it's not just a thermodynamic or environmental question. You can then utilize that energy that is being converted into reusable energy that can be supplied back to the grid. Certain regions of the world are able to supply small communities with energy. So, I think it is probably worth a fresh look at it. And if SWMCOL has that done, I would love to see that as well. But I think waste energy can bear benefits, especially as we are an island community. We would be restricted by space at some point in time. And the quicker we get into it, out of that paper in 2009 that was done by UDT and the Department of Engineering at UWI, they, touted based on this scenario, and they looked at about 3 or 4 scenarios, a return on investment of about 3 years to 15 years. 15 years, I believe, was the upper limit. Of course, that metric can change based on prevailing rates.
Dr. Danraj?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we take all that you're saying into consideration. I think it links in directly with what SWMCOL was mentioning when they mentioned about waste energy. And it has to be balanced as well with the economic viability of it, because they also mentioned, the scale of economy and everything in terms of that, the whole aspect there. But I think the points you have raised with respect to the benefits of waste energy conversion, we note what you have said, and I would like us to move on, to press on, because we are a bit limited with time. I like to the session. We would be closing the session probably at about 12:15 or 12:30. So thank you, and I would like to before we move on to the other category of questioning, if please either the Ministry of Rural Development or SWMCOL, in terms of the condition of access roads to the respective landfill sites. Member Richards raised specifically the Guapo site. Who has direct responsibility for the maintenance of those access roads? Is it I guess that would be the Ministry of Rural Development. Am I correct, Mr. Sipol?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So we share that road with Heritage. We do periodically apply for developmental project works to maintain the road. So as best as that's where our funding comes from to maintain that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Now, I would just like to bring the discussion to the question of recycling. Not as chairman of this committee, but basically just as a member of the public, because we have been hearing about recycling for a very long time. It seems as though we are making some progress, but the progress is seemingly minimal in the context of the extent of the issue that we are trying to solve. And is it that the scale of recycling, is it that it's just not commercially viable for entrepreneurs to get involved, or the state enterprises to be involved, and it's not commercially viable, and there is a definitive gap for government intervention in terms of meeting the gap that is there, that is hampering the progress of recycling? Or are there other factors involved? I would like to first get the views from Ms. Toby Koshi, their experience in Tobago. And I know that you all have this, you all have the Tobago Resource Recycling Initiative. How you all are doing with that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Public Health Inspector and his team, they will answer that question.
Hi, today is Ibrahim, project engineer. We would have partnered with RWL, so it's a public-private partnership with the Division of Health. We have environment on board, and we also have the Division of Infrastructure on board as well. That launch would have occurred in 2020, November 2020, and so far it's been a very interesting, because we have a lot of data. What we're doing right now is gathering a lot of data on both sides, on the side of diverting from the landfill, and also on the side of collection at the depot at Shore Park. So it has been a very good partnership thus far, and I will also hand over to my colleague in environment to give a bit more information and detail on the side of the depot in Shore Park.
Thank you, Jessia. Thank you, Chair, for that question. Right. Now, in addition to the partnership that we had before with my sister divisions, we also have partnered with the Environmental Management Authority and the Green Fund. So they are on board with this Tobago Recycling Resource Initiative with Recycling Waste and Logistics Limited, or RWL. Now, the materials we are collecting, the recyclables, include plastic bottles. Those would be categorized in the high-density polyethylene and the HDPE as well. Also, the polyethylene terephthalate, it's a tongue twister, the PET bottles as well. So we're focusing on the plastic bottles, the glass bottles. We're also focusing on aluminum cans, steel cans, cardboard, Tetra Paks, and newspapers as well. So we in Tobago, and I'm sure my sister division will agree, we don't have the luxury of finding another site, to have as a landfill. But our area is what is working in our advantage, and I really must take this opportunity to commend the executive of the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, secretaries, assistant secretaries, administrator, and technical team for what they have been doing, because what we have been doing in the eyes of limited resources, very small human resources as well. We have to use our area to our advantage. Because like I'm saying again, we cannot relocate Studley Park to any other area. So this project would have stemmed from us having that foresight to utilize and divert some of the material that is going to the Studley Park landfill. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is definitely a collaborative effort. We have NGOs on board as well. So this, I think, is something moving forward. It definitely has to be a collaboration of all entities.
Right, and it is Tobago's first public-private partnership, yeah, and it is our first materials recovery depot as well, as Ms. Ibrahim said, at the Shore Park facility at the TACO compound.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to the team from Tobago for the information that you have shared. I think what we are getting is a very coherent approach to the issue of recycling. Before I go to SWMCOL, are there any specific gaps, immediate gaps, critical gaps that has to be filled, and what factors are engaged in filling those gaps, if you would like to identify, with the whole recycling initiative?
I would say the gap would be just working out a communication strategy and public education. So it's just making sure that everybody is on board and aware of all the plans that we have. So that is key, that communication strategy is key.
Yes, so it's basically just to add to what Ms. Ibrahim is saying, we need to bolster that communication strategy, because we're still realizing that some members of the public are unaware of the project, right? So we need to use all media/mediums of communication, and any assistance rendered through you, Mr. Chair, and the JSC would be greatly appreciated to get the messaging out there more to the Tobago public, and by extension, of course, to Trinidad and Tobago public, and of course to the short-term and long-term tourists that we have coming to the island as well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your response. And yes, coming back to SWMCOL, I think what we are trying to get is recovery really commercially viable here in Trinidad and Tobago, and if not, the level of financial or operational intervention that is needed by the government to supplement what SWMCOL is doing?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Let me make, first of all, a blanket statement that there is money in recycling, but the approach has to be sustainable. There are various activities taking place now within recycling. We have more and more companies getting involved, and we've been working with some of them with regards to projects. But I think for this process to work, it has to be sustainable from several points of view. The first I want to talk about is building and changing that culture in Trinidad and Tobago to become a nation of recyclers. That is a process by itself, and communication does play a role in that, obviously, but it's getting each citizen of this country to understand the importance of recycling. And then you talk about how you go about this whole process. Well, in the beverage container bill that is coming, hopefully, I can't speak on behalf of our line minister, but we've been working very closely with the Ministry of Public Utilities. Next week, we start the consultations with all the stakeholders. That is being coordinated by the Ministry of Public Utilities. But in that, it speaks to a more holistic approach to recycling, in that we're looking at the source, the homes, how we generate waste from there, how we treat waste from the homes, how we separate at the homes. And this is a volume game. So if you don't have the volume, it's not going to be profitable for anyone to get involved. So the idea is to ensure that we get the volume to the individual companies that are interested in recycling in Trinidad and Tobago. That is how you address this issue. And the new bill, which again I would say is a recycling bill, takes that into consideration. From where we stand, again, this initiative can be a very profitable initiative if done properly and a holistic approach is taken. I don't know if you want to add anything else.
No, Chairman, but just to say that we, in Trinidad and Tobago, as it currently stands, based on what we know of the recyclable industry, particularly starting with the reusable, the beverage containers on the one hand, tires on the other hand, we are confident, based on our knowledge of the industry, that those two waste streams, or resource streams, as we like to say, does hold the potential to stimulate entrepreneurial activity and economic growth if, as our chairman says, we can get the volumes in the right place. And we believe, with the path that the Ministry of Public Utilities is taking us, that we are not far off from that.
Okay, thank you for the responses. Now, we see that happening a lot in other countries where we actually have separation at the source, in particular the households, and the collection process reflects that separation at the source. But here we have been talking about it for a while, but we still seem to be far away from that. Any views on that?
Thank you. The legislation that will be coming forward will be it's one way of, unfortunately, of changing habits is to enforce proper habits. And the legislation coming forward will speak to that in creating that culture where you will have to separate at source. And then the logistics associated with that will have to be worked out also in partnership with the various regional corporations throughout the country. But again, we must deliver in that direction. So most countries where there is active programs, in fact, the SWMCOL team visited Canada recently and observed what was taking place in Toronto as well as Nova Scotia. And in Nova Scotia in particular, the progress that they've made there is really the separation at source. And that system works very well to the extent that I think 50 or 60%, 90% of their waste coming in is being recycled. So that's an amazing story. And that's the kind of story that we want to tell by the year 2025. So again, everything has to work in concert, and legislation will also support that. And I think if we do it the right way, I think it will be a very successful. The whole process will be very successful.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Milford. What it does, we understand what he's saying, but it begs the question now, in terms of the preparedness of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government on the collection side, because so my question to Mr. Sipol is, in the context of all what is being discussed here, what is the preparedness of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government with regards to collection? Because it would mean having to collect separate when it's separated at the source. The logistics of the collection, how it's going to impact on the present system that you have. Do you have to put in new mechanisms to deal with that separation at the source, and how it's going to impact in your delivery to the landfills?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for the question. I think that is the $1 million question. What I want to say is that the corporations have been engaging in what we would call curbside recycling projects. This was prior to COVID. This was an exercise that basically all corporations were engaged in. However, they were essentially very small projects that focus on certain communities in the various municipalities. And reports coming back to the ministry has indicated some measure of success in these projects. It would not be correct to gauge the success of these curbside recycling projects, and to comment on a more a project of this nature on a big national scale. Someone said earlier that the big challenge really would be to change the culture of our people. We who are being privileged to travel abroad, we recognize that this is something that is quite common, not just in first world countries, but even in some areas I understand in the Caribbean. So it means, therefore, that it is quite possible to for the country to be in a state of preparedness to embark upon this particular initiative. However, we need to use the right strategies. We need to get buy-in from the public. And, it's just a change in our mindset that it will be required in order to successfully engage in such an exercise. I also want to say that this is very long overdue. And from the perspective of being a citizen of this country, somebody who cares about the environment, somebody who sees the value in such an initiative as far as sustainability is concerned, opportunity to provide jobs. Mr. Chairman, I think that this is an exercise that has to engage the total efforts of all stakeholders to make it a reality. But again, getting back to your question, on the issue of preparedness of the municipal corporations for such an exercise, we know that corporations are engaged in community education initiatives at this primary school level, sensitizing the children about the importance of properly disposing waste and possibly the recycling of waste, as well as composting and such initiatives. But it needs to take place at a greater level. We are also hoping that with the imminence of local government reform, that there will be a sustained effort in bringing the population to this desired place. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sipol. From at least from where I sit, it seems as though you guys have some serious homework to do, because with the passing of this pending beverage container legislation, the impact on collection is going to be significant. With my limited knowledge, it seems as though even your collectors, those contractors who are engaged in collection, I don't know if it would involve repurposing of the vehicles, because a lot of those vehicles are compaction type collection vehicles where they compress everything. Maybe some of the items being collected from the source separation would not, in order for it to be attractive for downstream users, maybe it would not have to be compacted to that extent, or all of these technical factors. So we would really urge. We would like to get something from the Ministry of Rural Development and local government in terms of this pending legislation. What are the impacts that it's going to have in terms of your current operations, the logistics of collection, and how the ministry is looking to address those. If the ministry can give some thought to it and can inform the committee in writing as to some of the initial steps that you are looking to take to work in consonance with what is being the legislation that is pending. Ms. Sagaram Singh Suklal, you have your hand up.
I apologize. Yeah, I wasn't seeing the raised hand. As the ministry were on the point of the curbside recycling projects, of course, speaking of all the benefits and all of that, I recall, Chair, in looking at the submissions in the ministry, their submissions, of course, mentioned at I think it's in response to question 3, page 1, they spoke about the introduction of curbside recycling project taken as a measure being taken by the municipal corporation to reduce the negative impact of the disposal of waste and so on. But I can't recall reading any details of that particular project, at least based on what the ministry is saying. It seems as if there's a lot of benefits to be gained through this project, and if at least for the benefit of the listening public, and of course myself as a regular citizen, if the ministry could just put on the record, just give us a little more details as to that project and how it would have worked, that curbside recycling project.
Okay, thanks, member. To the chair, I will have indicated that basically all the corporations pre-COVID, because prior to 2019 or 2019 and earlier, would have engaged in these curbside recycling projects in partnership with the EMA. And since the restrictions pertaining to COVID are gradually being removed, corporations are now getting back involved in such projects. So that at present, it may not be as publicized as we may like it to be, but the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government can provide an update on such initiatives being undertaken at present in writing if the committee so desires.
And with the details of the project itself, please, because I think that is something interesting for the committee to have a look at. Of course, based on your recommendation, if I heard you correctly, suggesting that this is something that we can look at as a national project, correct?
Yeah, thanks, member. Again, yes, it could be a forerunner of something that is much greater in scope in a national sense.
Okay, so certainly, Chair, of course, with your permission, I personally, as a member, would like to see, some details as to how that project would have worked, at least for the committee's consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Member Sagram Singh. Thank you, Mr. Sipol. Before we start wrapping up, there's still one or two things the committee wanted to look at. One is the question of hazardous waste and how is SWMCOL approaching the whole issue of hazardous waste. But before we go there, as we're talking about recycling, the waste characterization studies that was done some time ago actually pinpointed organic waste as being the highest waste that's generated, particularly from the households. Now, I know we're speaking about beverage containers, recycling, and all of those things, but when we add the organic waste from households to the collection of the tree cuttings and trimmings from that is done by the local government ministry. Is any emphasis, or are there any plans to put emphasis on composting? Because with the whole trust in agriculture and grow more at home and all of those things, composting is definitely would be an advantage in that area as well. But is SWMCOL or Ministry of Planning, anybody's have we thought of that as a viable option?
Chairman, through you, not only are we looking at the beverage containers, we have looked at the tires, organics, e-waste, and green waste. And so, and in terms of the organics, we've looked at both the green waste and the food waste. So I'm pleased to report to the committee that we have already partnered with private entities in Trinidad to treat with some of the green waste that is coming in. we are looking at expanding plans with the municipal corporations to treat with the organic food waste, but both of those we envisage that we will use composting in some form as part of the ultimate solutions for the country. But not only composting, we are looking at a range of solutions, but all of those solutions together will we think provide a more sustainable outcome. The intent is to take those circular economy principles, to take those sustainable economy principles and really embed them in how we treat with these waste resources and make them productive once more. So the food waste, as you quite rightly pointed out, can be turned into that process as composting and then provide fuel to new food. And that's some of what we are looking at very closely.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Milford. I think the committee would really appreciate if we can get some details from you in writing regarding this aspect, because the questions we have asked from you and what you have provided in writing gives us some information, but I think we like to broaden the scope and request as much information as you could provide in writing, so it would assist us in our work. As we close up, I'd just like to request also of you, of SWMCOL. So much has been said and so much appears to be centered around the engineered landfill at Forest Park. I mean, going down the road, we have had a lot of discussions on it. And what we would like to ask from SWMCOL is if you could provide us with as much details of that project as possible, including the time frame that you are looking for, the key milestones that are involved, and the respective activities that you are looking at to bring that into fruition. I know you have a CEC application with the EMA at the present time, but what are the steps you are taking that are necessary to take the project forward? Also, I am not sure in terms of, because to me, concurrent with what is being done, you have to be looking at the transfer stations. And if you can update us, maybe briefly now and provide in writing to us, what is the progress with regards to the transfer stations, the siting of these transfer stations, and the financial requirements that are necessary in order to bring those, the whole feasibility of it, both the siting and the financial feasibility of the transfer stations as well. And also, from where I sit, I see the decommissioning of the landfills at Bitam, Guanapo. I see those decommissioning and the one at Guapo as well to be relevant to the whole engineered landfill exercise, so that we can have smooth transitions from the current operations into the landfill as it is developed. So if you can, I don't know if you would want to just briefly provide any brief details in a couple of minutes, or you would want to just leave it for your written submissions. Mr. Milford?
Chairman, through you, I would pass you on to our CEO to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Milford. Chairman, briefly, when we speak about the engineered landfill, we are speaking about a 5-phase project that includes all of the constituent elements that you just mentioned. So the new engineered landfill does contemplate material transfer stations. These, it is envisaged, are going to be located at the existing sites, which we think will provide some opportunity to the municipalities to not increase their cost of transit. And as articulated by the Ministry of Rural Development, there may even be an opportunity for them to reduce costs in that space. So We have a 5-phase project, phase 1 of which is going to be completed with the completion of our waste characterization study, which would have started last month. And I believe in phase 4, we are looking at the closure of the existing sites and remediation. As mentioned earlier, Chairman, you will recall, we've already advanced a plan for remediation of Guanapo. So we are not waiting necessarily for the imminent closure of a landfill in order to provide these plans. We are doing these plans as the time and funding is available to us, so that when it's time for execution, we can simply execute on those plans. But as you've requested, Chairman, we will provide an overview of the engineered landfill project. It does speak to the elements that you have requested, you have spoken about, and that detail will be in there, along with their timelines, there's costing, the location of material transfer stations, all of that is in our current project plan. So we will share that with you, Chairman, certainly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. I think it's a good point to bring our inquiry to an end. As we do so, I would just like to invite the respective entities who are with us to please offer your closing remarks. So we'll start with Ms. Duke of the Ministry of Public Utilities.
The Ministry of Public Utilities, though did not have much of a voice today, took away from today's sitting the principle of collaboration and consultation. And you would have heard Mr. CEO of SWMCOL mention a couple times that the ministry is spearheading some consultations. It will not just be on the beverage container, but also on the National Integrated Solid Waste Resource Management Policy and the National Waste Recycling Policy. We are due to start these next week with public entities and in the following week with private entities chambers. So we are looking forward to that, and we are looking forward to bringing that collaborative approach and bringing all the stakeholders, some of who are here and who we have been meeting with to review these policy documents. And of course, when we have these consultations and we have further amendments, then we will be best poised to have all players on board to advance, reuse, recycle, and recover. So we thank you for the opportunity today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Duke. And I can assure you, as the committee continues its work and we engage on this matter in the future, we would definitely be affording the Ministry of Public Utilities all opportunities to provide information and to also communicate with the listening and viewing audience tuning into these inquiries. Thank you very much. The Ministry of Planning and Development.
Mr. Chair, the Ministry of Planning and Development is very appreciative of the opportunity to have participated and contributed to this Joint Select Committee's discussion on the impacts of landfills on the environment of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Chair, I trust that the collective discussions have provided insight towards the committee in the determination of a pathway to effective and sustainable waste management. And as the Ministry of Planning and Development continues to execute its mandate to implement National Development Strategy, or Vision 2030, we recognize the importance of placing the environment at the center of social and economic development. And therefore, together with our sister agencies, the BCRC and the EMA, we shall continue to strive to support the implementation of projects that seek to minimize the impact of pollution from waste. So, Mr. Chair, I thank you very much. And to your committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ali. Thanks very much. Mr. Sipol from Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it has been our pleasure to be part of this conversation on the issue of landfills. And, based on a SWMCOL report in 2021, but we realized that approximately 700,000 metric tons of waste is being deposited annually in our landfills. That would be 1,500 to 2,000 tons per day. This is cause for great concern. The general public is learning of the challenges and the adverse effects that this situation has on people, on people's health, on nature, on the environment in general. And I believe that this mandate of this committee is one that is very critical. We really need to address this situation to ensure that there is a more sustainable form of waste management in Trinidad and Tobago. Not just for ourselves, but for the future generation. So we trust that as the committee focuses on this issue, we will be able to communicate the importance of it to all our citizens so that there could be meaningful change taking place as time goes by. So thank you again for giving us the opportunity to be part of this meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sipol. Mr. Romano, are you with us?
Chairman, I am still with you, listening attentively.
Yes.
Chairman, protecting human health and the environment is a critical component of sustainable development. And the national environmental policy is also a very important piece of policy for Trinidad and Tobago with respect to protecting human health and the environment. We thank you for inviting us to this consultation, this JSC on the impact of landfills, and we look forward to positive developments on our landfills and as we move towards best practice in all our landfills, both in Trinidad and Tobago. So we thank you and we look forward to positive results from this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Romano. Mr. Milford?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman and committee members. We really want to thank you all for inviting us here today, for allowing us the opportunity to present our challenges and the opportunities for the future of SWMCOL and by extension, of course, our country, as we treat with waste in a more effective manner in Trinidad and Tobago that is at world standards. The issue of waste mitigation is one that is grabbing the attention of all countries globally. And we have to do our part to reduce the impact it's having on our environment. Again, I thank you very much for inviting us here today, and we look forward to further consultations in the future. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Milford. Ms. Toby Quashie.
Thank you very much, Chairman. In closing, I would like to share that the Tobago House of Assembly has made great strides on the island in waste management and remains committed to developing a more sustainable waste management system through public consultation and the rollout of policy. We continue to ensure the best practice is implemented at the Studley Park landfill. The THA is rolling out an impactful public health campaign on waste minimization and recycling with our partners, the Tobago recycling resource initiative, as we acknowledge that the change required starts at the homes and that educating our population is vital. The Tobago House of Assembly firmly believes that the key to sustainability is to move away from a linear economy and become a more circular economy where waste can be redesigned into products. We are indeed committed, despite our challenges, to make Tobago the greatest little island on the universe. We thank you, Mr. Chairman, and your committee.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Tobikoshi. On behalf of the committee, I would like to extend our greatest appreciation and thanks to all the entities who have appeared before the committee. The challenges are many, there's no doubt about it, but I think the committee has been assured that we are in the right hands, because there's a lot of work, there's a tremendous amount of work that is being done. I think our stakeholders have a very good grasp of what is involved, and you have identified clear pathways going down the road by which we can address the challenges that we have before us. So we would really like to thank you for the information that you have provided, for your genuine inputs into the interaction that we have had. And we look forward to further engagements with you all as we develop our report going forward. And just to kindly remind those entities that undertook the responsibility to provide the committee with the written information, our secretariat would be in contact with you regarding those written submissions. So thank you very much once again. I would like to thank our committee members for their inputs and for their continued hard work regarding this particular committee, and also to thank and extend appreciation to the parliamentary staff, in particular our secretariat that serves this committee selflessly and efficiently, headed by Mr. Johnson Greenwich. Much thanks to the secretariat. And to thank our listening and viewing audience, thank you very much for joining in the process that we have engaged in this morning. So thanks again to everyone, and I hereby declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Chairman. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Chairman, bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.